Welcome to Talking Heads on USA Global TV, starring the one and only wonderful Dr. JACALYN. It's a prestigious place where world-class influencers and experts meet, and where you'll find the most trusted advisors and coaches for all things in life and business. Visit usaglobaltv.com to sign up for our newsletter, get the value you need, and be first in line to learn about events and giveaways and other valuable content. Connect with us. Email Dr. JACALYN at usaglobaltv.com to talk about how you can become part of USA Global TV. That's USA Global TV, where the doctor is always in.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to USA Global TV and Radio. Our show today is Aging Gracefully with Humor. I'm Dr. JACALYN KERBECK. I'm the president, founder, and chief listening officer here at our network. Today, we have a fabulous guest. She's been here before, and she is just burning up the bookcases, the bookshelves in bookstores. She's an author, and she's also a 4-time dementia caregiving survivor. Her name is Tracy Cram Perkins. Let's welcome her to the show. Hi, Tracy.
Hi, Dr. JACALYN. Thank you for having me back.
Thank you so much, and especially for getting up at dark early to be here from the West Coast of the United States.
Oh, yeah, it's still dark out.
Yeah, I'm sure that it is. But, Tracy, just speaking about the dark and getting up early and being uncomfortable in some ways, you've gone through that 4 times now, at least, with taking care of other people who have dementia. And people are getting diagnosed, newly diagnosed all of the time. And it's a scary proposition, thinking about however many years and with whatever is going to happen in a continuous decline. Tell us a little bit about your backstory, and then I want to get into your book.
Okay. I have, as you said, I cared for 4 family members. My father was the first one that actually moved in with us. He came to us because he had been traveled from facility to facility, and they wouldn't let him live by himself, and so we were able to bring him home. The first 6 months he was living with us, we had all sorts of really awful things happen. He didn't believe that he was going to get to stay because of the number of places he had been moved to in a 5-month period. He'd literally been in 5 facilities. And he also was so depressed, he attempted to commit suicide. So we had to deal with that. And also, every night after he started feeling a little more comfortable, he would not sleep in his bed because he had been actually taped down to his bed in one of the facilities. He slept in the chair in the living room for 6 months. And whenever he would get upset or scared, he'd come stand outside my bedroom door and call my name until I would get up to help him. And that would go on like every 30 minutes until he was calm. So until I could figure out how to address whatever the issue was. And believe me, at the beginning, I did not know how to deal with that. And so I would wake up in the morning and I would just be a literal zombie. So it took a while before we were able to make him feel safe and secure. And literally, right around the 6-month mark, he seemed to relax. He believed he was really home. He wasn't going to go anywhere. And he was finally sleeping in his bedroom. And we were able to do other things with him to be able to give him a better quality of life.
I really appreciate what you just shared, thinking about being taped down. You mentioned taped down to a bed. What must that be like? Why do they do that, by the way?
He was admitted. Okay, he had been in a group home. It was this very after he'd been released from the hospital from coming out of a coma. He had moderate Alzheimer's disease. He was released to a group home. Group homes, at least in our area, only have 2 staff members during the day and night. My father was too active, basically. He just wanted to go for a walk because he was a very physically active man. And they could not spare the staff to do that because everybody else in the place was bedridden and he was not. So he kept escaping. We had a little bit of an issue because we didn't know what to expect. So we were getting upset with them for letting him wander because he would go walking around and he was very close to a main highway. So he finally, on his final escape, they called uh, 911, and they had him delivered not to any place locally, but they sent him to King County to one of the geriatric psych wards, which is just outside of Seattle. I live well south of there. And we ended up as a family, they just told him that they sent him to a facility, and we had to call to find him. And we checked 3 counties until we actually did find him up there. We drove a little over an hour to get there, because he didn't understand what was going on, and he didn't know why he was there, and he was heavily medicated. Turns out he had been, well, they gave him too many medications, let's put it this way, and it was making him hyperactive instead of calming him down, and so because he was in the geriatric psych ward, they literally taped him to the bed, and when we got there, he was crying and asking me, "Why are they doing this to me?" And that's a gut punch. I mean, how you don't wanna see your parent lying there in a bed, and you can't do anything. You can't get him out of there. You can't comfort him. I mean, there's just nothing you can do. It was really awful. And he was there for 3 days until Medicaid stopped paying for it, and then social services moved him to the next more secure facility. And I didn't have power of attorney at the time, and so my husband and I had to literally do a little bit of a battle with the help of my sister who did have power of attorney to get the power of attorney because he was no longer in his right mind, so that we could both share it and I could move him home with us. And he kept escaping from every single facility because all he wanted to do was go for a walk. And by the time we would get to the fifth escape, he would be sent to the next high level security. By the time he got to the fifth place, he figured out how to unscrew the windows in his room, pull the plate glass out. And he was in his pajamas and slippers, climbed out the window, put the glass back in, screwed it back in, and went for a walk. And they called me. This is 2 days before Christmas and said, "He cannot stay here anymore. You have to find another place for him." And that's how we got him home with us. I mean, it was not a pleasant journey. It was everything that could go wrong went wrong. And I'm sure we're not an atypical. I'm sure that a lot of people have gone through something similar. It was not fun.
Wow, I can't even imagine. And the fact that your father could take out the window, get out, put it back. Did he know what he was doing? I mean, was he able to communicate in any way about it?
Oh, absolutely. He was in early moderate, Alzheimer's disease at that point, and even though they had him really drugged, he was a very, very brilliant man. He was actually an interior designer, and he also did, installations of the materials that they sold to people. So he literally knew how to take those windows apart and put them back together because he'd done that for 30 years. So it was one of those, and that's something that's like, if you have somebody that's a mechanic in the family and it's coming to the driving issue, realize that until they get to a certain point, they will probably be able to figure out how to fix whatever you do to disable the car. So
Mm.
keep that in mind because whatever skills they had in life until they've progressed to the point of the disease where they no longer have that information, they can do that. So he was easily able to disable the window. There were no cameras pointing at the windows because they'd never had anybody do that before. And when they finally recovered him, he was very happy to show them how he did it. And they found out that 30% of their windows had the same flaw. So he actually helped them with their security. And the social worker couldn't believe it. She goes, "He was so happy to tell us." And I go, "He loves teaching people how to do things." And it was just beyond them to think that he could do that when he was there because he had dementia. And people weren't recognizing the humanity that was still left within him.
Mm, what a great point that you just mentioned. Thank you for sharing that. And when we think about dementia, we typically will think about somebody losing their memory,
Mhm.
and they can lose their short-term memory and they can continuously repeat themselves. Are they aware they're repeating themselves? Obviously not.
No, no. And also what they're telling you by doing that is they're telling you that they're feeling lost and they
Mm,
don't know how to get their power back. And you can enable them and reduce the amount of repetitive questions by actually, like, let's say we used a whiteboard because that's what I did with my dad. My dad would ask all sorts of questions, the same questions over and over. And what I finally figured out was I stole this from the hospital because they use whiteboards and would say what day and what time and who that was caring for them. I would put up whatever his schedule was for the day, and because he'd ask me that all the time, and then also I would include whatever his repetitive question was. And whenever he would ask me the first time, I would answer that question. And then when he would ask me again, I would point to the board. After about 3 or 4 times, he just knew to look at the board and then he could answer his own questions. And he was really happy because he knew the answer.
wow, that's so
Mhm.
profound. So it's basically that was he feeling lost, or that he had no control or say in anything, or control or say in what was about to happen to him?
Well, okay, all of us keep like appointment schedules. We're all working. We know that we have certain things that we have to do. So all of us have done that for our adult lives. And he had lost that skill. He couldn't remember and he didn't know where to look for it. So I actually helped him by making sure that he knew what to look for and where to look for it. Now, with my aunt, when she was going through this, we had a calendar clock that we did for her. Some people call them Alzheimer's clocks because she was having trouble remembering the day, the date, the time, whether it was morning or evening. And she loved that thing. She would have it right by her television so that if she fell asleep and woke up, she would know whether it's 7 in the morning or 7 o'clock at night. She would know if it was Thursday or Tuesday when she thought it was Saturday. So it's just some way of helping them orient and solve their own problem. The more you can empower them, the easier it is for us as caregivers. We don't have that extra burden of having that repetitive question over and over and over. That doesn't mean there won't be a new question, but if you figure out ways to answer it and then let everybody know in the family or friends who are coming over so that they can help too, that way you get a little bit of respite. So you want to do things that not only help you, but help everyone around you so that you can get extra help.
Yeah, that's so important, Tracy. And we've talked about this before, but I think it warrants discussion again. I think ultimately in every family, at least one person is going to be the primary caregiver.
Mhm.
And then other people are also caregiving from a distance from wherever it is they live, doing whatever it is that they can. But yet also there's that feeling of guilt, whether you're the primary or you're not the primary. Am I doing enough? Is it okay for self-care? When can I take a break? Should I even take a break? How selfish am I thinking about the break? What are your thoughts about these questions?
Oh, I have felt every one of those. Believe me, there have been times when I was like praying, please just make this all end. But really, you do need to take a break. What I ended up having to do for myself when I was first learning how to do this, and I put this in the book, was literally putting a timer on my phone to remind me to take time to breathe and just do breathing exercises because I needed to calm down. Because if you're too stressed out, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to have, you'll spill things. I mean, just everything can go wrong because when you're in a hurry and you're trying to get someplace really quickly, and then you do all the things that you shouldn't do because you've now made a big mess and you can't take care of it. Okay, it's the same thing with caregiving. You need to take the moment to breathe. Anytime you can empower family members or friends and let them know what might happen while you're gone, while they're giving you a break, will give them a deeper relationship. Give you some downtime that you really, really need because you need, and it can't be just one day a week. It has to be 3 or 4 times a week for you to keep your battery going and to recharge. You just need a few hours every few days just to have some time to because you can't be on 100% of the time. It's just not physically possible. You'll just set yourself up for a heart attack, which is why most caregivers usually pass, especially when you're over a certain age of like 75. Most caregivers will pass before the person they're caring for.
Whoa. Woo.
Yes.
Stop the press on that one. Wow.
You have to get self-care. If you do not, you will die before they will.
Amazing. Wow, that's profound. So, a question I have, Tracy, is I'm going to come up with an example. Let's say you are the primary caregiver of someone in your family, and you decide you're going to take this time. Maybe it's an hour, it's an hour and a half, and there's no one to come to the house. Is it okay to leave the patient, for an hour and a half?
If they are at a place where they won't wander and they've got something to keep them occupied, yes. If not, then now, if there are places like Visiting Angels where you can hire someone to come in and cover for you for an hour or an hour and a half. And they can, play cards with them, talk with them, read stories. They can even help with cleaning. I mean, whatever you need them to help with, they can do to give you some downtime. Also, there's resources that you can contact because, oh, let me share this. I don't know if you've heard of the dementiamap.com. It's the Lori LeBay's brainchild. She and Dave Wheeler have put this together, and it's free or inexpensive information services you can get for taking care of someone, especially if you are the solo caregiver. Um, because most of the time, you're abandoned. There's absolutely no help for you, and there's no way to get help. This is a global resource, so it doesn't matter if you're living in West Virginia or if you're living in Southern California or wherever you are. There's resources from around the world on here teaching you how to do care, teaching you where support groups are so that you can find the support group that's right for your needs so that you are getting some downtime. Now, sometimes like with my husband and I, we would wait till my dad went to bed because he, of course, would be up and down all night. But he would first go to bed, he'd sleep really soundly. We would take a time and have a quick date. And so we would go out and we, even if it was just going to the grocery store to buy deodorant, we would find some way to make that fun. Anything you can do to give yourself some downtime, to give yourself some time to stay connected with your mate, with your friends, anything you can do is really, really important. And just have to figure out when you can do it when you know your loved one won't be at risk of, wandering or hurting themselves or turning on the stove and leaving it on while you're gone. I mean, just whatever you can do.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Brilliant. So let's talk a little bit about your book. You've had tremendous success. Thank God. That's amazing. How does that feel? And how are you celebrating it?
Well, I have to say I'm a bit overwhelmed by the reception, and I'm very grateful for that because I know what it was like not having a resource that I could just pick up one thing, flip through the pages, and boom, there was the answer I needed. And so that for me was this is my passion project. And I really wanted to make sure that other caregivers out there had something that they could put their hands on and just say, okay, this did not work the way I thought it was going to be. What should I try? Oh my gosh, this is what I did that I shouldn't have done. I should try this instead. So, and learning the distraction techniques, anything you can do just to make it a little bit easier. Um, I had times when my dad would be melting down at the lunch table and throwing silverware at me. And I didn't realize it was me causing the problem. And until I figured that out, and I had to do a lot of reading to figure this out. This was not something that I just came up out of the air. I've got over 30 books on Alzheimer's and dementia care. And I went through them with a fine tooth comb trying to find the answer. And they never had like the step by step. If this doesn't work, try this. If this doesn't work, try this. Escalating the issue or combining things that would work together. I found that with my dad, uh, bathing might be an issue, and then after that, changing clothes might be an issue, or things that I couldn't get him to do. And I got a really great suggestion from Jolene Brackey's book, Creating Moments of Joy Along the Alzheimer's Journey, about gift wrapping clothes and then giving it to the person on their pillow so that they will change their clothes. Well, what I did is I turned that into because I want to get more for my buck. I want to get something bigger out of this. So I did that because he would, if he lost something, he would think it was stolen. So I had like 4 or 5 items that I would keep stashed in a drawer where he would never find it, so that when the item was stolen, I could be the hero and find it. Then I would get to, or if it wasn't stolen, and I wanted to get him to change clothes, what I would do is the night before, we would wrap the box. I wouldn't tell him what it was. I would just say, "I've got this gift I'm doing for so and so. Can you help me wrap it? I don't have enough time." And then give him the supplies to wrap a taped box. So he would get it on whatever he could. It was not necessarily artistic. Sometimes he would get um, stuff where I couldn't imagine you could actually get it in there, but anyway, it doesn't matter. It was him wrapping it. Then I would put it away and thank him. Inside that box, I would recycle notes from family members and friends telling him that they were giving him this gift because they were thinking about him. And so I would put it on his pillow while he was eating breakfast. He'd come in his bedroom and he'd find this thing on his pillow. He'd be so excited. He'd open it up. When he opened it up, he would see the note in there from the family member or friend saying, "We were thinking of you." I would have him, he'd want to change his clothes. He want to put it on right away. So he would change his clothes. I would take a picture because and I'll explain the backstory in a minute. I would take a picture of him and he would model and we would have fun. And then I would send the picture to the family member or friend who gave him the gift. Part of this was because my dad was such a huge wanderer until we got the issue addressed with him that the first time he wandered out of our house, I did not know what he was wearing. My mind went completely blank. He'd worn the same thing 3 days in a row. It was a red hoodie and blue jeans, and I couldn't remember. I could not tell the police. I called 911. They told me they were too busy. They didn't have enough officers available to help us search. I was on my own, so I had to get my neighbors out involved, and they helped me find him. And it turned out he was over at a neighbor's house visiting. So but it was one of those things. It was frightening. And when I went to the Alzheimer's Association's website, they're the ones that suggested the daily photo that I could share with the police so that when we had a silver alert, they would have a photo that they could put on television. So that way they could help me find him if that ever happened again. So I was trying to combine all these things into one routine. We did it regularly enough that he, he got all excited. He wouldn't always remember that we did it the day before, which is the beauty of Alzheimer's or any dementia. And so then we would have him with a good behavior day because he'd be all excited he got a gift. So anything that I could do to empower him, make him have a good day, then I got a good day, and we had a lot more fun together.
Ah, I love that. That's such a great way to look at things. And you have your book there, yes?
Yes, I do.
All right.
Woohoo!
By the way, what I want to share with our audience is that I do have your book. My sister also has a copy of your book, and it's just incredible reading, chock full of information. I've mentioned this. I did a book review for anybody out there who didn't get to see it. You can go over to our YouTube channel, USA Global TV and Radio, and you can look for Dr. Jacalyn's book review, book club, actually. But I love the size of the book. I love the size of the font. I love the fact that there's that box that has, can you show us the box that has the information? Let me spotlight you.
Okay. Can you see that?
Yes. Yeah, let me move the banner. Hold on. Okay. Yeah, there we go. What's covered in this chapter? Fabulous. And it's just, I don't know, the feel of the book and the size and the font, it's just really a fabulous resource. So I would love for you to share some key points in there from the beginning. So somebody is maybe suspecting someone has dementia, or someone's recently been diagnosed, maybe that person's been diagnosed, and then it's like, oh no, the world's coming to an end. Now what can you share with us?
Okay. Do you want me to read something or just
Yeah,
discuss?
sure. I'd
Okay.
love for you to
I'm going to
read it.
read you the introduction then. Um, we all look for quick answers and shortcuts, especially when we're under great stress. This book is for anyone who is struggling to care for someone with dementia. It contains what can I try in this moment tips you can use whether you're caring for a family member or a friend. Each person's journey is different. The road of dementia care will change every aspect of your life and theirs. Dementia is like playing hide and seek. Ready or not, here I come. None of us saw dementia barreling down the hill at us like Mack truck with no brakes because it arrives slowly with plausible explanations for everything. Only when we look back do we see the mounting evidence. No two people experience dementia the same way. No two family members will care for a loved one with dementia in the same way. Caring for someone with dementia is one of the most stressful burdens a person can ever accept. We have more training to drive a car, operate a smartphone, or boil water than we do to care for someone who is saying the long goodbye. Using or excuse me, unlike a day job, with dementia care, there are no vacations, no pay raises, no glowing performance reviews. Unlike raising a child, there is no first day of kindergarten, no graduations, and no weddings to look forward to. My journey started when my younger sister called me to tell me our father reached his tipping point and didn't have the health to continue caring for our mother. Our mother had cancer and the treatment had caused her dementia. My husband and I decided I would quit my job and take over my mother's care. What I didn't know then was my father already traveled down the road of Alzheimer's disease. Alzheimer's disease is a great mimic, disguising itself as anything else, even from the person who has the disease. I didn't discover he had it for several more years. I wasn't a caregiver. I didn't know the first thing about caregiving. I didn't even have any medical training. I did know I needed help and lots of it. The caregiver, that's you and me. You may think a caregiver is a person who's working in a skilled nursing care facility who is trained and gets paid. Nope. We all fall into that category. We tend to think of ourselves as wives, husbands, life partners, daughters, sons, friends, or extended family. You are a caregiver. Even if you are 3,000 miles away and managing as much as humanly possible over the phone, you are still a caregiver. We are America's largest healthcare providers, the unpaid family caregiver.
Wow. Brilliant. Yeah, you mentioned so many points there that are just spot on, in that we don't have training. And then, by the way, at the time when this shows up, it's not usually very convenient, is it? It's like, wait a minute, I had all these plans to do X, Y, and Z, and now I guess I'm going to have them derailed so I can do this. Did you ever feel any resentment?
Oh, of course. I I was so inexperienced. My compassion dried up when I stopped getting sleep. And it was because of and it wasn't until after my dad started sleeping in his room. So for the first 6 months, he was, every 30 minutes at the door calling my name. And of course, it woke my husband and me up. My husband could go back to sleep and I would get up and take care of him. And believe me, after 6 months of only getting 30 minutes of sleep at a time, or not even that, I mean, you really lose your ability to do anything but crawl into yourself because now your body's just craving that you need to take care of yourself and you need sleep and you just go crazy. So yeah, there was time when I really resented it. After I started learning and figuring out how to curb the behaviors and started, being able to help him more, help himself, I started getting downtime. I started figuring out how to teach people to help me, and other people taught me as well who had done it before. So I started learning. I had a lot of angels in street clothes come by and help me to get through this because I could not do this by myself. And my husband was doing everything he could. Humanly possible while making sure he carried the burden of making sure we didn't go bankrupt. I mean, there were so many things that happened. My dad was on Medicaid because we had burned through all of their finances. It was before Obamacare, and they had lost everything to the insurance cap. So they lost their home, they lost all of their savings. So there was no money but what we had through Medicaid, his Social Security check, and what my husband and I could foot with the bill. So it was very costly. It was not easy. I won't lie.
Tracy,
Yeah.
wow. So that's another eye opener. So for people who are thinking, and for some reason you're stuck on solo, I keep trying to move you, but you're not moving. So for people who are thinking to themselves, wow, we could actually go broke as a result of this. What are the costs? What are the fees that start to mount up when someone is at home getting the care versus if they're in a place getting care?
Okay, the things you won't think about, my father thought the toilet was a trash compactor, and we had garbage being flushed down the toilet. We are on a septic system. So we didn't discover this until sewage started backing up into our shower in the master bath. So you can imagine how exciting it is to have 2 inches of raw sewage in your shower.
Oh,
We then had to call and get help because then we had to have the plumbing people come out, drain the tank, fix all the problems that we were having as a result of having all this garbage in there, and then we had to find a way to prevent my dad from flushing garbage down the toilet. So, I mean, it's things you don't think about. Leaving the refrigerator door open in the middle of the night, and then having all the food spoil and possibly burning out your refrigerator. Any of these things can happen, not just like doing day-to-day medical care. I mean, my dad had diabetes, he had a heart condition, he had all sorts of other things besides just dementia. And so we had to deal with a lot of different things but fortunately, Medicaid and Medicare paid for his drugs. Otherwise, that would have literally put us out of our house. The cost of his medications were very, very expensive initially. Once I went to the pharmacist and had them do a drug interaction check, we were able to get him off of 22 of the 38 medications he was on.
what?
Yes, he was over-medicated when he first came home to us because every facility would add medications to calm him down. Some of them were off-label, and so it ended up having a lot of hyperactivity and extraordinarily high blood sugar that we could not manage, and all of his, readings were off the charts when we would do blood work. One of my girlfriends said, "Go into the pharmacy, have a drug interaction check," and that's how the pharmacist gave me the list and said, "Please take this to your primary care physician, take him off of all of these medications, and you will have a much better result." About a week and a half after he was off all those medications, he bounced back. He was to the point where he could go for walks by himself without getting lost. He could have a social life. He could, he was picking flowers from our garden and giving them to the ladies at the grocery store. I mean, it was just an amazing difference what a drug interaction would do. It was actually, they were speeding him to his death. We were able to not only get him back, but then he was willing and wanted to go out in our yard and do yard work. And he wanted to talk to people and he wanted to have a social life. And it was absolutely phenomenal. So, and I didn't know that even existed. I mean, I knew about drug interactions, but I did not understand how that worked until I actually had the pharmacist do it. And then I brought her a box of chocolates. I told her thank you. I gave her this big thank you note because we got my dad back. It was so incredible. And for 3 years, we did really, really well until the disease just started progressing because we can't stop the disease, or at least I didn't know how. And for 3 years, I had my dad, and then he started going downhill because of his age and his health, and the dementia was just taking over. But
Oh my gosh, what an incredible story. I'm like speechless about the number of medications that he was on. So, in your experience caregiving for four people with dementia, what are some of the, I'm not asking the names, but what are some of the drugs that they give you for what? So, in other words, for pain, they give you something. I don't need the name of the drug, but what are, like, why 22 different drugs?
oh, they were doing that because my father was acting out. He wanted to go for a walk, and they wanted him to be compliant. And he was not that personality. And it's because they didn't have enough staff to address the issues. They he had diabetes, yet they gave him a drug called Seroquel. It's a antipsychotic drug. When with someone with Alzheimer's disease and diabetes, it can either cause diabetes or it can escalate. And he was having blood sugar readings anywhere from 300 to 500 milliliters, or yeah, well, whatever the reading is, but between 300 and 500, which meant he should have died from a heart attack at that point. He did not. He survived it because he had been so physically active before that happened. When we got him off of all those drugs, his blood sugars returned to normal. We got him into an endocrinologist who was able to help us manage all of his medications. His primary care physician did a great job. And then I studied like mad to find out, okay, what other drugs? Because they gave him things like lorazepam, and they gave him what was the patch called? Aricept. They put him on the Aricept patch. Um, it had the opposite reaction for him that it does for most people. When he was on Aricept, instead of, having better memory, he refused to eat because it changed his taste buds. And so everything tasted awful. And the only way we get him to eat was literally to force feed him, which is not something you want to do. We took him off of Aricept. And again, he showed a tremendous improvement because it just wasn't right for his chemistry.
I'm so in awe of everything that you've learned, and the fact that you've been able to take this information and not only help one person, two, three, four, and then your book being out there, and tell our audience the number of copies that have been sold so far.
We've sold almost 6,000 copies.
Woo! That's a huge number, Tracy. It's a huge number. So, what kind of feedback are you getting from people, whether it's reviews or people just reaching out to you directly about how this resource and your experience has really been helping change lives?
I may cry, just warning you.
It's okay. Go
It's a
ahead.
very emotional thing for me. Give me just a second. I have had some of the most amazing feedback from people that have either sent me messages via Messenger, on Facebook, emailed me through my website about how this has helped them. One person was telling me that once she learned how to do the distraction techniques with her mom, uh, it saved her life. And which, again, try not to cry. Um, but it was very meaningful to me because I know how difficult it was trying to calm my dad down, or work with my mom, or any of the other family members that needed a little bit of extra help. Um, to be able to give somebody a tool that can actually, give them a bit of their life back and make it so that they're not struggling day in and day out with these crazy behaviors, and them not realizing, just like I didn't, that I was causing the problem because I kept trying to orient them to reality when that's not where their story was. And I had a very lovely, heartfelt note from someone. Now I'm not going to say any names, but they had purchased the book. They read the book. They had a pulmonary embolism. It ended up in the hospital for 10 days while their husband was at home by himself with no one to care for him. When she got out of the hospital, she went home and she gave a testimonial on my Facebook page about how she was going to go and do all of the extra lists and notes and charts that I include in the book in case something happens to her that's in the emergency section, because for her, she actually lived it. That to me was very powerful.
Wow, I can totally understand your emotion, because when someone tells you that you did something that really changed their life or impacted their life, that goes right to the heart. So congratulations for that. That is absolutely beautiful.
Thank you.
So something that you have mentioned before, and I think is important for our audience to understand, is that the disease progresses. And as it progresses, other things can start to fail in the body
Mm.
too, because we are human. And as we get older, things are going to fall apart. But when they're falling apart and also the person's mind is going, that's sort of like a double edged sword. And you can have somebody, like, for example, I have ulcerative colitis. I've had it for 30 years. If I start to get dementia, God forbid, I have ulcerative colitis too. That's not that's not a great combination. So, how do we as caregivers provide that kind of support, knowing that it's not just physical and mental and it's a whole package?
So I'm going to use my most recent example because my aunt just passed, and she had the beginning stages of Alzheimer's disease. She had only 20% of her heart left. She had kidney cancer where they had removed a kidney, but it had spread through her body, so it was in her lungs, had moved to her pancreas, and was moving into her intestines. Um, she was also on a pain medication called oxycodone, which you may have heard of, but it causes the bowels to stop functioning as well, and so you're could be subject to having impacted bowels, which means that nothing is moving through, and you could literally die from your bowels exploding. Um, she she was having trouble because at this point we had to have her in a skilled care facility because that was just beyond anything that my family and I could manage. But I was still having to give her like a suppository because they were having staffing issues and there were not enough med techs on staff. And so I literally, because at this point I had already gone through 3 other family members, was able to give a suppository. I was able to do a bunch of things that as a family member I could do, but as their staff could not. So there's a lot of things that you might have to do, but then you have to remind them, and this is the hard part because they're not gonna remember, that they may have an issue until they start feeling pain. So they're gonna say, "I don't feel pain because the medication is working," and then suddenly they are in pain. Or they're having an issue where, like with my father, he had, intestinal neuropathy, and so, explosive diarrhea was a common occurrence. And we had one instance where we were actually traveling and it went off, and we didn't have this was the first time we'd experienced it. And we were at a campground with a laundromat facility, and we literally broke the washing machine and dryer because for 24 hours we were just washing clothes, washing clothes, washing clothes, and scrubbing out the RV we had rented because of what was happening. So, I mean, there are so many things that can go wrong that you don't expect, you would never expect. Um, you kinda have to just deal with it on the fly and then figure out how to work with it later is at least that was my experience, because you don't know what's gonna happen, and so if you have some understanding of whatever disease is coming on, or other health effect, routine is all powerful. The reason my dad had his issue with the diarrhea was because we had taken him on a trip. He was so far out of his routine, so far out of everything that we did for him that his body said, "No more." And that was our fault because we didn't know. After we figured that out, we were able to prevent that from happening again. And I learned to pack an emergency preparedness kit, which I talk about in the book, so that you have things to take with you so that if something does happen on the fly, you're ready to go. But there are all sorts of things that can happen depending on what the person's going through.
Tracy, I was envisioning when you were sharing that, because I've had ulcerative colitis, and let me just tell you, I get it, I know, but to have to clean up after someone else, that is
Mhm.
a whole other story that takes you
Oh, yeah.
with angel wings flying around. So, oh my goodness, that is
Oh.
amazing, amazing. So, as the disease starts to progress,
Mhm.
and our loved one is really not recognizing us anymore, that can also be a complete shock, a knife in the back, so to speak. And then I imagine it's almost like you're caring for someone who doesn't even know who you are, and it's kind of like you want to do it but you don't want to do it, and you're stuck in that I don't even know what that is called. Have you ever felt that way?
Oh, yes, I've experienced that more than once. With my mom, I was very close to my mother. I ended up becoming the book lady because when we I could no longer connect with her anywhere else, I could connect with her through story. And it just so happened that her favorite, cozy mystery series were The Cat Who by Lillian Jackson Braun. And so for a year, I read to her every single day and for the last year of her life. And that's how we connected because at that point she had cancer, she had dementia, and there, she'd had esophageal cancer. So it was, she required special feeding. There was a lot of things that went on there. Um, and she said, they keep telling me you're my daughter, but I don't know you. I only know you
Mm.
as the book lady. And I said to her, because I am the book lady, because now I knew I had to change that relationship to be where she was and not where I was. But prior to that happening, and this is I don't know how you feel about this, but I used the dementia as a way to repair our relationship from before because she would reset like in 5 to 10 minutes. So we had a chance, and I don't think most people will do this, but we had a chance to repair our relationship for the places that we, had come in conflict because we actually got to talk about it as adults to each other. It would be over with, and then she'd forget, we'd reset, and we'd start over with something new. And I got the emotional healing out of that. So it was a really wonderful experience for me because I just took a chance. I mean, I didn't know that that would work. I didn't know if she'd be upset. I did tell her a story in front of my dad that my father had sworn me to secrecy about a hippity hop exploding in the garage while I was helping my dad remodel the house and me hitting the garage door. And my father told me I could never tell her because she would be very upset. So of course she's lying in her sick bed dying, and I'm describing how I'm flying through the air. The garage door is halfway open so we could let the paint fumes out, and the top half of me hits the garage door. My legs go underneath, and then I just shoot down to the ground. And I could not laugh when I'm telling this story. And my mom gets bug eyed, and then she starts laughing. It was so awesome. I'm sorry, it just cracks me up thinking about it. But, I mean, we had some really amazing moments because I chose to do that. I decided I wasn't going to waste this time while she was dying and just lose the entire relationship. I changed the rules to meet her where she was. And you give yourself permission to do that, and you can have some really amazing moments.
Oh, thanks for that personal share. I really appreciate your transparency. Something that we could be here for on and on. By the way, we're starting a new health panel, and I'd love to have you be a regular on that panel. So I'll reach out
Oh,
to you for details on that.
okay.
What I'm wondering is you referenced your mom and you referenced your dad, you referenced your aunt and some other underlying conditions. Which came first? So does dementia always, I shouldn't say always, but does dementia accompany other diseases when you get to be a certain age, or do you get the dementia first and then the other diseases? How does it work if there's
It
any pattern to it?
it kind of works in conjunction. So, the Journal of Alzheimer's Disease calls, they call it type 3 diabetes. If you do not manage diabetes, which 3 out of 4 of my family members had, if you have poorly controlled diabetes, um, you will more than likely assure that you will get Alzheimer's disease. So if you have type 1, type 1.5, type 2 diabetes, the Journal of Alzheimer's Disease calls it type 3 diabetes. And literally, it's any of those, just not poorly managed diabetes, because this has to do with your blood sugars and insulin levels and how it affects the brain, because this is an enclosed system. Once you put something in, it gets everywhere. It's not like just going to go into this finger. I mean, it goes throughout the entire system. So it's basically what you're feeding yourself, lifestyle choices, and your exercise regime. So it could be any number of things. For my mom, she had it's anesthesia dementia. It's called postoperative cognitive decline. So she had the esophagus removed, and the literally she did not recover from the anesthesia. And so that gave her her dementia. She did not have diabetes. So and she was a petite woman. So she wasn't exactly, she was just a little tiny woman. So For her, it was the anesthesia. I have found that when I have surgeries that I don't bounce back after the anesthesia immediately, but I do recover. But that also tells me that when I get to a certain age, I know I won't recover. And so perhaps choosing not to have surgery would be a better option for me if I want to keep my cognition. Now, there's other things. I mean, it could be alcoholism, it could be HIV. There's a lot of things that can lead to any one of the diseases, also genetics. So they kind of go hat in hand together. So it literally, if you are doing things where you're keeping yourself healthy, you're not eating, say, a lot of junk food, but getting healthy greens and a healthy diet and not too much processed food, exercising and socializing. I know we're going to see, because of the pandemic and all of the isolation, we're going to see an exponential growth in Alzheimer's disease because of the pandemic and that isolation.
Wow. Oh my gosh, I have a zillion more questions, but we've run out of time.
Oh, I'm
So
so sorry.
please do come back again. I mean, I'm just so grateful that you're here sharing this information. Please show your book and let people know where they can purchase it.
Okay, it's Dementia Home Care. Oh, there we go. Okay. Um, it is available everywhere. So you can get it at Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Target, Walmart, your favorite independent bookseller. So anywhere a book is sold, you can find this. Um, for those of you that are carrying, if you are just looking for a toolbox that you can just flip through the pages and find the answer, or I have an 8-page table of contents, you can run your finger across the table of contents so you find the thing that you're dealing with and right that moment. It's the toolbox that for the tool that you need when you need it.
Brilliant. Thank you, Tracy. And I would love if you would send me a high resolution um, picture of the cover so I can keep it on a regular basis in our newsletter.
Oh, sure. I'd be honored.
All right, fantastic. Thank you everyone for being here today. Please do reach out to Tracy. As I mentioned, I have the book, my sister has the book. It is really so powerful, and it's just empowering also to know that Tracy's lived this 4 times. She's done all the research. She's a walking encyclopedia, and she's taken the information and made it available for all of us, because each and every one of us is going to experience this, whether it's us personally or somebody in our family, somebody we love will be diagnosed with dementia. And Tracy, to your point about the lack of socialization during that pandemic and people not taking care of themselves, maybe feeling sorry for themselves, eating more sugar, drinking more alcohol, not getting as much exercise. So do pick up a copy of the book, and Tracy will be joining us again, hopefully soon, and hopefully on our health panel. So we'll see, there's lots of opportunity.
Thank you. I look forward to coming back, and I will be back in December. I've signed myself up for the bookstore. Yay!
Yay, fabulous. You're always welcome, Tracy. Thanks again. And thanks
Thank you,
to our
Dr. Jacqueline.
audience. Please go over again to our YouTube channel, USA Global TV and Radio. You can find Tracy's other interviews there under Aging Gracefully and What's Trending, and also my book review under Dr. Jacqueline's Book Club. We'll be right back with What's Trending. Tracy, thank you again for getting up early with us. Enjoy the rest of your day, and hopefully I'll see you again soon. Bye,
Thank you.
everyone. Bye, Tracy. Bye.
Bye.